In favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. Agenda item C, Mrs. Hatcher. And this is the year-end budget adjustments and some additional appropriations for 14. Mrs. Hatcher?
You have before you the resolution to amend the budget for fiscal year ending June 30, 2013, which is the year that just ended. We are required by law, and the board appropriates expenditures. It does not appropriate revenues. For audit purposes, you do not want to have any fund, general governmental fund, being showing over expenditures. So this is an exercise only to bring the funds that either do not have a budget or are going to be overexpended for reasons I'll get into, raising the budget enough so that they are not overexpended and won't show that way in the audit. We normally don't adjust the revenues except to balance each budget because you are required by law to have a balanced budget even when you amend it. So I really don't get into adjusting a lot of revenues. I'm only considering the expenditure side because that's the side that gets written up. The first part of your resolution has to do with those departments in the general fund that I'm increasing because of grants that have been received throughout the year, which we typically do not budget. We wait till the end of the year, not knowing how much of the grant we're going to receive or how much we're going to expend out of the grant. Or we're asking that certain things be reserved and brought forward for the next year. None of the issues on your resolution are supposed to add together. They're all separate issues. The general fund is your biggest fund. I'm basically only adjusting it, increasing your budget, both revenues and expenditures, by $173,000. There were departments such as your correctional institutions and a few others that were overexpended. There is enough there that I don't need to adjust every department. You appropriate based on departments. Some only adjust in departments that have grants or have requested to carry over funds to the next year. Several of the items in your first section of the carryovers will be farther down, but they won't add into anything. The only adjustment to the general fund total is the $173,000. Your revenues were increased just to make your budget balance. So your revenues and expenditures are balanced. CSA is being adjusted. Oops.
Answer questions on this part first, so we don't move forward. No, but I think Mr. Seeley looked like he was looking at me like he had one.
I guess it's $173,000. Is that all grant money, or is it some from cash reserve?
No, sir. It's either grant money or it's a decrease in an expenditure because we're asking it to be rolled over to next year.
The revenues are all listed, are all an increase in revenue. There's no
These are the only line items that are being done.
No fund balance raising that.
Because the 173 had to come from somewhere, and I guess that's what I wrestled with when I looked at this. So
your electoral board had expenses. Well, for every expenditure, I have to have an offsetting revenue.
Right.
So I'm increasing those revenues that we actually received monies from either by reimbursements or grants. Several of the departments, such as the IT and
well, the electoral board's
planning.
a good one because we said that we had already accounted in the budget for all of their savings. So they really didn't have any savings in the budget, even though we were going to allow them to sort of co-op their savings for their new voting machines?
At the time that I said they did not have much savings, Ms. Moen was counting in a $5,000 reimbursement from the state. She had the backup from the state back in August of 2012 that she was receiving $5,000 to offset the optical scanner. The state somehow managed not to give it to us. So I'm now accounting it as a receivable. It is back in there. So yes, between the electoral board and the registrar, they do have approximately $11,000 total in savings that I can roll over.
To pay their $40,000 bill? What was it?
50?
50.
50.
It looks like 50 is already there. I lost my place now on that.
50 has to do with the purchase orders. That's a separate item.
Yeah.
The board approved,
The 50's
The
in this
50.
year's budget.
the 50
Right.
is
These are all last year's.
is in this year's budget.
Right.
It's not in the
Roll over,
13-year
right.
budget.
I gotta find my place. Where'd I lose registrar at?
That has to do because we issued a purchase order.
Right, we're
Right.
And the
ahead.
purchase order was issued
Before June 30th.
before June 30th. The goods have not been received. To roll it over,
Okay.
I have to do this.
So basically, the revenues are the top left hand. General
Yep.
fund revenues, those are all increases in revenues that we received over budget. So the money's actually there. The budget was
Let me say
$305,000.
that easily. This is more money than we expected as revenue,
And
right?
that is
So
correct.
we're getting more revenue.
We already have.
And that was my first question. So the 173,000.
It's more money than we've already received.
Right.
So it's not savings from the budget, it's additional money?
Additional money.
Okay.
And that matches against the changes in the expenditures that are just below it, the general fund expenditures. And the reason we're showing you the revenue change is we have to show you that it balances it because you're increasing the total budget by 173,000, and so we're increasing the revenue side of the budget, which is already money there. It would show up in the audit that we're already over. We're just changing the budget. So it's budgeted numbers, but the cash is already there for these 173.
Okay. That was my,
We're just doing that unique thing that only happens on local government. It's called a balanced budget.
Right,
So
right.
that's all we're doing.
So that's really this whole left-hand side of the page to the top, the first part of the top of the second page is all just balancing the budget out for the end of the year for FY13. And so that's why I didn't want to get mixed up in what we're doing on the second page, which is now rollover and where that's coming from. So I think if we broke it into two different things, it would be a lot easier to understand and hopefully
That's good?
reduce questions.
I'm good.
Okay, so then we're just talking rollovers and really just the key on rollovers. And I guess we formally need to do this, but we said before specifically the sheriff had money left over. We were going to give that money back to the sheriff and let him decide how many sheriff's vehicles to buy or lease or however he wants to handle that. So, but I guess lease is probably not a good idea because it's only one-time money, so he's going to have to buy cars with this amount of money. And that's what the board still wants to do? Okay. Any other questions about the rollovers, aside from the AS400, which we'll get to later?
Well, yeah, I saw that on here, but I was going to come back to that, but
Yeah. That technology is so old, I had hair when it came out. So, all right, anything else there? You too? Okay, yeah. Okay, so thank you, Mrs. Hatcher. I think we're good. Item E, Mr. Seeley?
I guess I was curious, this got pulled at one point in time off the agenda, and now it's back on. And I'm curious how we got here. Because I thought the applicant pulled this at one point in time.
I can answer that, Mr. Seeley.
Mr. Fincham?
Under our normal process, once, and the board's aware, just for everybody's background, Planning Commission makes a recommendation on a zoning action that gets referred to the board, it comes to the board's consent agenda, and you all schedule the public hearing. You are correct. Planning Commission had made a recommendation on this particular zoning action and forwarded to the board. Mr. Bowserman requested that it not go forward to public hearing. He never actually pulled the entire zoning application. So he is now requesting to get back on the board's agenda for public hearing for this special use permit amendment. So he did request that we not go forward with a public hearing 6 months ago, plus or minus, but now he feels like he's ready to go forward again.
We have to act in 60 days from the Planning Commission. Is that right? 60 or 90?
No, it's actually longer than that. You are within your time frame under which the board is required to act.
Okay.
But it was a matter, the applicant did not want to go forward at that time, and the board consented to not going forward with a public hearing back then.
I guess my question is, since they pulled it, how long can they pull it and keep it in limbo and then send it to us?
The applicant's making the pull.
Well, I understand.
But that doesn't
But
reset the clock.
there's got to be some time
Right.
period. And that was my concern, because I was thinking 60 or 90 days from the Planning Commission to us to make a decision, and I recall this being a lot longer than that ago.
This has been longer. I don't recall that he had a specific time frame. I could go back and check, Mr. Seeley.
I'm just talking about, I mean, us, our process. Planning Commission,
Yes.
hearing, vote to
There-
us.
Yeah, there are actually 2 periods specified in the code. I believe you actually have a year from the time it is referred to you to act on that request. An applicant can request an extension beyond that. The board is not obligated to grant it. But there have been cases where these requests have actually been longer than 6, 8, 9 months.
Yeah.
That's not the case
I do
here.
recall a couple of those. I didn't think, we don't reset the clock if the applicant pulls it.
That's
If the
correct.
applicant pulls it, he doesn't get another year from the time he says, let's pull it. But we can extend it if the applicant asks us to extend it, or we cannot. But I guess, I didn't remember when this was, but I guess we are within the year time frame, so he's still good. So it comes to the board now if he asks.
Well, I guess I understand that, but I guess when you get something that's been off this long, I just wondered what the circumstances were that it's now going forward. Because we've had this long lag between Planning Commission and board.
He was trying to work out a resolution to his utility issue as part of his request for the expanded campground hours or time period.
Did he get them worked out?
Not necessarily to our satisfaction, but I think we agree it's time to go forward and resolve this issue.
And trust me, Mr. Seeley, will have every opportunity to
I just-
ask him what
I
those
just-
issues are.
Just when I get a blank sheet like this, it says, and I recalled it being pulled, there was some discussion, and now it appears
Yes, sir.
eons later, it begs a question.
I understand.
Okay, so we're basically letting that go forward unless the board wants to not let it go forward, but if I don't think we have that ability.
No, we have
You
to
know,
hear.
sometimes you don't have to always say no. You know, you can say yes every now and then. Yeah, we don't. We might as well just let it go. So we've accepted C, we're accepting E. Motion to accept.
I'll make
those
a motion to accept C and E as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Seeley, seconded by Mr. Underwood. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. We will now go into closed meeting. And the estimation is we probably won't be out at exactly 7:30, although we will try. I need a motion that the board convenes in closed meeting pursuant to a prospective business exemption, section 2.23711A5 of the Code of Virginia, to discuss the expansion of a business located in the county about which no previous public announcement has been made, and the consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff exemption, section 2.2, 3711A7 of the Code of Virginia regarding specific legal matters requiring legal advice. Regarding, you scratched out, regarding financing other matters related to the YMCA, and that's it? Okay. Is there a motion to that effect? I don't care you. I mean, we don't have to. Motion to that effect, please.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Underwood, seconded by Mrs. Seeley. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. We will be in closed meeting for, we will reconvene. I apologize for our delay. The board, as we left, we had 3 closed meetings that ran a lot longer than we had planned. So again, I apologize for the delay. That brings us to public comments. Oh. Well, it brings us to public comments, but before we get there, we've got to come out of closed meeting, so I need a motion to come out of closed meeting.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second? Motion made by Mr. Underwood, and Mr. Akers makes a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Mr. Black, do you certify that only those things we went into closed meeting were discussed?
I so certify.
Mr. Seeley?
I so certify.
Mr. Underwood?
I so certify.
Mr. Akers?
I so certify.
Mr. Taylor?
Also certify.
And I so certify. That takes care of the closed meeting. We'll now move to public comments. This is a time where we allow any citizen that would like to speak to the county to do so. Your comments are usually limited to 3 minutes or less. At this point, I'll ask anyone who would like to speak, please come forward. Since there are no public hearings, anyone who would like to speak, please come forward, state your name and voting district or your county town of address, not specific address. But we will now make the podium available for anyone who would like to speak as public comments. Is there anyone who would like to speak? Yes, young lady.
Good evening, gentlemen. I wanted to take a minute to introduce myself to you. My name is Tony Radler. I'm running for the House of Delegates from the 55th District, which, of course, as you know, includes 11 precincts in Caroline County. I just wanted to briefly say that I hope that I will get the chance to work with you next year on business issues. I'm particularly interested in getting rail service to Caroline County and high-speed internet to rural areas throughout the district. So I just wanted to make this brief, but I've met some of you in person and others I look forward to meeting. Thank you
very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Yes,
Good
sir.
evening. Stephen Ellis. I reside in Essex County, but I farm in Port Royal. I so happen to be the representative of this area of the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, the state board member. I'm not representing them at this time. I'm representing myself as a farmer. I farm a good portion of the land that's coming up in the, I call it zoning, but it reboundary of Port Royal.
Boundary adjustment, yes.
Boundary adjustment. 175 acres is what I farm of that part, so of multiple landowners. So per square foot, that would make me the largest business in Port Royal. But I would like to have a few questions that I have about it. I will not go into their budget, your budget. I know nothing about that. It's just how this would affect me if it was to go into effect. The boundary is set on the back. I looked at the map. Today was the first day I saw it. I'd heard about it this week. I saw it today. It's set on the back side of 2 properties that I farm, and it makes a pretty straight line. But I don't know how that will affect my agriculture enterprises being part of a town. I don't know how that will affect if I was to put up irrigation system there, whether that would become taxed as property in the town. I have questions over eradication of pests such as groundhogs on the farmland, how they affected being in a town. I have questions about hunting that deters geese on my crops that I've been using off and on there. questions about if I was to bulldoze around the field edges, would I need different permits than I've needed before? And questions over what cost this will generate the landowners, because ultimately they will be passed upon to me as the leasee of the land and the sole generator of income for that land, because it's open farmland and I'm the one that's generating the income. And so if their basis costs got increased, I'm sure mine would shortly. I'm not telling you what to do and not to do about this. I'm not even sure all my landowners agree on what they want or don't want. I haven't talked to all of them. This is just as businessman in that area. I have talked to one landowner who is against it, and he has forwarded a letter toward y'all. I hope it's in your records. It was in the book records up there.
That's Mr. Holloway.
Yep. But the other 3 landowners I have not personally talked to, and they may be for it. I'm not, and ultimately my obligation is to support them in whatever they do. But these are questions I want y'all to kind of think through as you go about this, because once it's done, y'all kind of cede the zoning over to the town, and then I would be asking them questions more so than anything else. And if it doesn't cost anything extra for the landowner to have farmland included in town, then why are they asking for it? Because it's not going to generate them the income that they're looking for. Okay. Any my questions? Y'all may ask me any, or I can leave it be and see what becomes of it.
Well, thank you, Steve. Unfortunately, all the questions you asked are questions that the town of Port Royal would have to answer.
I understand.
But they're going to be here. If you'll stay for a minute, you may hear some answers, you may not, but...
I'm not for or against anything absolute. I have an open mind. I just want things, you know, to know what's going on as it happens.
Well, thank you for your comments. Sure. Is there anyone else who would like to comment during the public comment section? Mr. Vice Mayor, is this about the next thing that's coming up, or?
I'm Jim Heimbach from the Town Council of Port Royal. I'd just like to answer a couple of the questions he asked.
Why don't you do that on the Port Royal dime?
Okay.
Okay.
I didn't realize whether we'd be allowed to speak at that point.
No, we're just listening to his comments, and then when he can show up at the town council meeting, and you can take care of those directly. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Hearing none, we'll declare public comment closed. And we will move to agenda item number 4, which is the continued discussion of the Town of Port Royal boundary adjustment. Mr. Cully, I think you have a status. We understand the board was made aware via letter that the town's grant application for the water system was turned down. So you have that. You've been meeting with some others, and this is really placed on the agenda to allow Mr. Taylor a forum to discuss it more. So
That is correct. We included the latest revised map in your packet, along with a letter from the town of Port Royal and a copy of Mr. Holloway's concerns that he had sent to the town and to the mayor, and then had called me about it, so I asked him to forward those things to us. So those are the things that we have in there, and so, Mr. Taylor?
is Mr. Holloway here? Mr. Holloway's not here? Okay.
No. Yeah, he doesn't live in this area. He's out of state.
Okay.
But anyway, but thank you, Mr. Chairman and Board. Basically, this is a request for a boundary adjustment. The town council has come before the board previously and asked for a boundary adjustment that would include bringing in some of the businesses into the town so that they could make use of some of the funds from the businesses to help address some of the concerns that they have. And Mr. Oaks, is it? The questions that you were asking tonight are certainly valid questions. And as has been said, the town council is here, and I'm sure that they will communicate with you. And certainly you can have my number, and we can communicate to see that not only you, but any citizen who has a legitimate question gets an opportunity to have that question answered. But for the purpose of this tonight is to send this for public hearing, such that at the public hearing, the landowners who are adjacent to the areas that's being brought in will get an opportunity to be notified. Public hearings will be set up for the town council as well as for the board of supervisors. And citizens will be able to come in and comment and ask questions and certainly have their questions answered, hopefully, to their satisfaction. But the major concern now is for the town of Port Royal to remain a viable town. And without this boundary adjustment, it would be almost impossible for that to happen because the funds that are needed in order to supply services and to pay town's bills are just not there. And hopefully with the addition of these businesses and the additional land, it will offer opportunities for growth. It will offer opportunities to generate revenue, to supply the services and to pay the town's bills. And the town of Port Royal can continue to be a town with its own charter, taking care of its own citizens and providing the services they provide. Having said that, if there are board members who have specific questions, certainly between Mr. Fincham and Mr. Cully, myself, and certainly people from the town council, maybe we can address those. But as I said, our purpose for tonight is to send this to public hearing.
Mr. Chairman?
Our purpose was to get kind of an update on where we are, see what else we need to do, then to see if it would go to public hearing based on that. So you had a question.
I just, living in the town of Bowling Green, Mr. Ellis, let me just say this, that we have two large tracts of town in Bowling Green, both of which can be hunted, farmed, groundhogs, varmint can be shot. Those are the only designated, there are two large pieces of land, and those designations still remain today. So I think most of your concerns about farming, hunting, bulldozing, those kinds of things don't change in the event that is actually brought into the town limits. What you're doing today won't change a bit, and what the landowner sees today doesn't change. It hasn't changed in Bowling Green, and they've, some of that property's been in there since the 1930s and 40s.
Let me go through the board first. Mr. Black, did you?
Are we asking questions tonight, or are we just?
Madam Mayor, are you in a position to answer questions?
There's questions. Is that she said yes?
You said yes?
Okay. And some of these would be county questions. Some of these would be for Madam.
We're kind of, and before you start, we're kind of disadvantaged because I had some questions I gave Mr. Cully yesterday, and you'll notice we don't even have Mr. Schiebel, so that's
right.
One of the things we really need to make an intelligent decision.
And if they can't be answered, then
go right ahead.
Okay. I guess the first question, and we've talked about this boundary line adjustment. The number 70,000, and I think we've talked about this before. The number 70,000 keeps on coming up. 70,000, 70,000. I guess the first question is where is that number? I mean, is that an approximate number that the county would be in the boundary line adjustment? The county would be losing 70,000. Port Royal would be gaining $70,000.
Could I try to answer that?
That's a staff question.
But I have some information that would be pertinent. And certainly I want you to join in. The $70,000, as I understand it, Mr. Black, is a collection of the taxes that are paid in those areas that would be going to the town as opposed to staying with the county. But I can tell you that the $70,000 is not a constant number. It depends on the taxes that are generated and the taxes that are collected. For example, I spoke with the Commissioner of Revenue, and that 77 number is not a good number anymore. As a matter of fact, it's decreased, I would say, substantially. We're probably talking just some over $60,000 now depending upon the number of businesses that are in the area, and as the business opens and the businesses close and so forth. So it would be kind of difficult to generate a number and say that this is the amount that's going to be collected every year, every year, every year. It could be more, it could be less. But in answer to your question, that those funds would be diverted to the town council.
Well, and I understand that, and thank you. Mr. Cully, is there a way that we could work with the Commissioner of Revenue to maybe get, I guess just for information purposes, what that number, say over five, running average over 5 years, what, if you put the boundary line adjustments from the past 5 years, what that number is? I just for curiosity's sake would like to see if it really is an average of 70,000 or around 70,000, because we say $70,000, but it's really hard for us to see that number. So is there a way you could work with Commissioner of Revenue on that? We'd be glad to, and that's where the number originated from, was the Commissioner. But Right. we'll look at the history and try to see if we can do a history of it.
The economy,
That's right.
so going up and down. Madam Mayor, actually, it's going to be back and forth, I'm sorry. What amount, if you're looking at an amount of money with the boundary line adjustment, what amount of money, is that your magic number? Is that the number that you're looking for, is the $70,000?
No, I don't think we're looking at a magic number, and we're not just looking at dollars. We're looking at the future towards sustaining ourselves and growth. Of course, we were maintaining when we had the bank there, but we've lost that now. So we definitely need to get that back to maintain. However, the problem with Port Royal is we are somewhat isolated, but yet our traffic counts have picked up because of the overflow coming down 301 now and 17. It's a good time to look toward expanding and trying to attract new businesses.
Okay.
And that's, we need to improve things to make it a more attractive gateway into this county. We can't just sustain. This is not a huge amount of money.
Right, and I appreciate that, and I mean, there's going to be a lot of discussion here, I'm sure. I just have, let me maybe rephrase the question. What number, I guess, is the number that you guys, because we keep on hearing the $70,000, is that number enough to sustain the $70,000? If the boundary line adjustment was put in place, okay, and the number came out to be the $70,000. I guess my question, at present situation, I mean, forget future growth, forget all that, at present situation, is that $70,000 enough to sustain Port Royal?
Yes, I think it is.
So that's a yes?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the next question I have for you is probably, because it's based on your letter here, and I mean, I just want the flat-out, just yes-no answer on this. God's honest truth. If the vote doesn't go to give the boundary line adjustment, okay? There's a two-pronged question here. Will you unincorporate the town, yes or no?
That would be a council decision.
So,
do you want me to tell you what my gut feeling is, how the council would feel? Because I mean, I can do that.
because we see in the letter, and the reason why I'm asking, it says in the letter it's going to happen.
Well, we have discussed it. We have not voted on it.
So we don't, I mean, so, all right.
You see the predicament you got me in?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're looking for answers, and I guess the next thing, is, as far as your water system is concerned, okay, you missed out on the grant, for which we were all kind of disappointed in when we heard the news that you didn't get the grant.
No, you're not the only ones.
Right, I'm sure you guys were the most disappointed. If you were given the boundary line adjustment, you're applying, a letter was given to us, you're applying for a couple more grants.
We have no choice. We have to keep looking for grants.
I guess my question is, water systems aren't cheap.
No.
Water systems are very, very, very expensive.
Yes, they are.
And I guess my question would be, is if you get the boundary line adjustment and you fail for the grants don't come through. I'm playing worst case scenario here. I mean, what next?
Would have to be to reconsider future ideas on growth and planning. We can go to just a substandard, no growth, no fire suppression system and possibly, and hopefully with the additional finance, we could get a small low-interest loan to cover that type of an improvement. But if you want to improve the county and improve the area for the citizens down there, we've got to do more than just sustain ourselves. One of the things that the community development grant people told us was, you know, you've got to have some capital coming in, you've got to have some revenue coming in to maintain this system. That was one of the points against us, is that we were running in the red, and having a new system is going to take more than being in the red to maintain. So you're exactly right. We need to increase our income.
I guess I'll be flat out honest with you here, and I guess my fear is you get the boundary line adjustment, and this is probably worst case scenario. You get the boundary adjustment, you get $70,000, you don't get the grants, and now the county's taking over your water system as well. You see what I'm saying? Like, you know, if you get the $70,000, the concern is that the water system has to be taken care of by Port Royal. You know, do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
So I guess my reply to that would be, would you rather we try and spend time and effort and endeavor to save the county from that and to protect a piece of the history of Port Royal, and you know, if the worst case scenario happens, I can't foresee that, but if you don't try, you don't succeed.
Right.
Sure, Jim.
Yeah, let me try to address that. We're looking at multi-phase with regard to the water system. In answer to your question, can we save the water system such that the town has water, based if we have the boundary change, with no grant money and no further support from the county?
Exactly.
The answer is yes. We had a plan that we had embarked upon while the bank was still there, before we lost that $8,000 a year when the bank disappeared. And we actually purchased a small ground-level used tank from another community in Virginia. We're planning to establish a pressure system, not a tower system, with the backup generator from fire department in the case the power goes out. Because, of course, the downside of a ground-level system is that no electricity, no pump, no water, whereas the tower, until the tower runs dry, you have water. We had that plan in motion at the time the bank closed. That could always be done. That could be done. We were looking at a cost of not much over $100,000. Clearly, with the kind of income we'd be looking at with the boundary change, we can do that. Now, that said, that doesn't move us to the future. And we still would want to be looking to the future. But I believe with the kind of money that we would be talking about with the boundary change, we can look to the future. We're not locked into only grants. We can be looking at loans. Okay. We couldn't even look at a loan before. What bank would possibly lend us money? We didn't have enough money to keep our streetlights turned on. In the long term, we have lots of things we need to do. I think Port Royal has a wonderful record of doing things on our own, not coming to the county for help. And I personally, to the extent that I, as one member of council, can make guarantees, will guarantee we're not going to be back here looking for more money.
Can I ask you a question, Mr. Heimbach? As a member of town council, the question I asked Mayor Long, if the county were not to give you the money, you guys automatically unincorporating? Oh, the boundary line adjustment, I'm sorry.
It wouldn't be automatic. I, for one, unless something opened up that I could see a possibility of the town being viable without the boundary change, yes, I would vote to give up the corporation.
Okay.
I'll let other. Right. We have one more council member here. If you'd like to ask him.
No, yeah, I appreciate that. I'm just curious. Mr. Fincham, the next one is actually for you.
Jeff, I want to make one correction. I had to look it up because it's been a while. The bid we got for the ground tanks were installation in the new pump house from one company was $373,000.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, just wanted to correct that.
Just take me through the process here, because right now there's no zoning, there's no county zoning for Port Royal, is that correct? The town
The town has its own zoning. That's correct.
So if the town were to unincorporate, okay, if the town were to unincorporate, then the county would have to, like on the streets
in Port Royal, the county would have to go in and zone the town, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
we would in some manner have to incorporate that area under our zoning regulations.